Hey, folks, this is Book Talk with Corbin. I am your host. We have with me Mr. Brother James here. I've had him on before. I really like to get the thoughts and views of just average folk, get their, again, their thoughts and views on what's happening, locally throughout the state and around the world. Today, I want to particularly talk about share his thoughts, get his thoughts on reparations and Black folk building wealth. But just before we started the interview, we touched upon this situation in Nashville. I think most of you are familiar with the situation in Nashville, that horrible shooting there, where, now help me on this, brother, because you got to always, with this whole transgender stuff, you got to be clear on what you're saying. She's a white girl who says she was transitioning to be a man, I have to assume a white man.
Mm-hmm.
And then she's upset because this Christian school, the school that she had one time had attended, apparently, didn't support this whole transgender stuff. And maybe she has some resentment about it and planned for months to go in there and kill some of them folk. Planned this for a long time. Wasn't spontaneous. Just planned it for months. I'm going to go here and shoot up these folks. But what are some of your thoughts on that whole thing?
Oh, well, I mean, the fact that you planned it, meaning that you planned on creating, you planned on doing something that was bad, is wrong, is unjust, and you can claim whatever you want to, in terms of, hey, I was transitioning over. It's that school's right, just like it's your right not to go there, or your right to move on with your life and find those people who support whatever it is that you believe.
Right.
But that don't mean that you go kill somebody because they believe something different than me.
Mm-hmm.
That's an excuse. It's not acceptable. She's already faced I'm gonna say he's already faced the consequences, and I'm not one of those people quite yet that's ready to say, okay, well, the she's a he. No, it was to me, and I've said it before, that was a man dressed up as a woman. Now, how you feel about it,
right?
Biologically, you're a man. Your mindset is that of a man, and you committed an act, which is typically done by I think most mass shootings are typically done by 100% of men in most cases.
Yeah.
She was a man. I mean, I ain't gonna say she was a man, but you can't say your aunt's your uncle. But he was a man, and he committed a manly act, which was going in there shooting defenseless people, typically women. Someone of feminine nature typically don't do that.
Don't do that, right?
And it's historically been proven that women, aren't like that. Men can be savages. Typically, women are not savages. Men, if you look throughout history, your most egregious acts, whether it's in war, conquest, has always been committed by men. Typically, women, because of their feminine nature, typically don't commit those sort of acts.
Right.
I put a wig on and a dress on, but your mindset and your response to things is a man. If you went up and you hit that so-called woman with a fist, and she's got the physical capacity to do so, she's going to beat you up just like a man.
Right.
So the way I look at it, there was a man who committed an egregious act, and from what I understand is that the person suffered the consequences of that egregious act.
Do you think somewhere in there it was cop by suicide? She was trying to do cop by suicide. Suicide by cop. Suicide by cop.
You never know. Probably so. Probably so, because obviously it was something other than that school that was going on within that person's life.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't just the school; it was the totality of everything going around you.
Right. Yes, some people within the so-called transgender movement, they're saying, well, she did what she did because she didn't feel that people were seeing her. She didn't feel visible. In fact, that's why the Biden administration put this thing out about, which the day of visibility. We see them.
I
And
mean, I'm gonna say I mean, again, it's bad that you have politics involved in this, but
Mhm.
politics should not be involved in this. But I understand politics does find itself involved in this,
Right,
but politics should not be involved in this.
right,
Those are individual choices made by individual people,
right,
and it should be treated as an individual choice.
right.
The
Yeah,
politics should not be, shouldn't be whether the president, governor, mayor. That should have nothing to do with it. And
right,
I understand that you're trying to garner votes and win votes, and there is this movement within the nation to say, hey, there is no gender reference, but you're trying to erase millions of years of biology
right. Yeah.
because of how there's this movement that says,
Mhm.
hey, because somebody feels a certain way that they have to be treated a certain way.
Yeah.
And that's just not, responsible people just don't do that. If my kid comes to me and says, hey, I want to be this, and it's like, no, you're not that. This is who you are.
Right.
And this is the way you can call it God, nature, whatever you want to call it. This is how nature works.
Right.
There is no reproduction without a man and a woman. We're all got here. And
Right.
they both have qualities that should be appreciated. Because you don't have one, don't mean you got to go and try to be that one because you were given that responsibility at birth. And
Yeah.
for somebody to try to, I've seen debates on shows where, a very prominent, African American man was in this debate, and the lady asked him a question, can men get pregnant? He was like, well, he was trying to justify it by saying, yeah, some men can get pregnant. And it's like, no, no men can't get pregnant. That's not biologically possible.
I've never met one.
Yeah, and I'm just saying now, just because if it's a woman that wants to try to say she's a man,
Right.
well, and say, well, I'm taking on the identity of a man,
Right.
because if you want to do it like that, okay, what happens when these transgender people or women or whatever, let's say I'm a man and I can't compete with men. So now all of a sudden I'm going to become a transgender woman, and now I'm playing wrestling, basketball,
Wow.
track and field.
Right.
Now, biologically, I have an advantage.
Yes. Yeah. Right. And brother, I think what you said earlier too is that, and I'm guilty of this as well. It's like you said. Bottom line is this: one human being went in there and murdered other human beings. That's what happened. That's wrong. And fortunately or unfortunately, the person was killed. I mean, but the bottom line is that, my Lord, shot 3 people unarmed.
Mm-hmm.
Three out of the 6 were children, 8, 9 years old. I mean, that's
Right.
like you said, that's the bottom line, man. This was just flat out murder.
Yeah, and I don't look at that any different than when you look at Columbine or any other mass shooting that's taken place.
Right.
The church down in, I guess, was it South Carolina, when the guy went in there and he shot up the church.
Yes.
I treat that's all the same degree. You can come at me with all these, fallacies about, well, he did it for this and the reason. No, there is no acceptable reason why you go in and shoot unarmed people.
Period.
There is no justification for that. There is no, well, this, that, and the other. No, it's wrong. And you face the consequences. Fortunately, in their case, the police dealt with that situation as it was, and there is no excuse for anybody doing anything. And you can come back. Yeah, we can all kind of lean on something, say, well, he did it for this, that, and the other. Okay, you probably did, but irregardless, consequences. Regardless of why you did it, you still got to face the consequences.
Right. And it's clear one thing that's really been out there. By the way, let me say this. This is Book Talk with Corbin, folks. I'm talking with my brother here, Brother James, a local guy, just an average human being, but thoughtful individual, wise individual. Always like to go to folks like him to get their views and perspective on things. Brother, like she, whatever, she's biological woman, planned this for the longest time. But it seemed to me either she was an extremely poor planner or she was wanting to, what they call that is suicide by cop. In other words, to act in such a way that they force the police officer's hand to shoot them. Because look, man, she was just like, they busted in there, drop your weapon. It's like she didn't have any defense, any thought. Well, when they come in after me, what I'm going to do? I mean, she was wide out there in the open. And I don't care how much body armor you got. You ain't got that body armor on your head, on your arms, and things like that. And I really don't think I don't think it took that many shots to take her down.
I don't know. I didn't see the video, so I couldn't tell you. But again, I would never understand the mindset of a person like that. I guess that's why you have people who are trained professionals to kind of try to evaluate people like that and try to see what it was that they were dealing with from a mental standpoint. And in some situations, based on just the nature of America, with the guns and the type of guns and you got more people today on psych meds than probably at any time, in the history of this nation, for sure. You got a lot of people out here that's just not stable mentally.
Yeah.
And not to say that people were never that way to begin with, but when you have access to not only guns, but the type of military type guns that people can have access to, those things are going to be part of what happens. That's going to be part of the collateral damage from having the guns and type of guns that you have in American culture and American society, and you couple that with the music and the culture and everything else. Yeah. So those things are going to be, and you're not trying to justify it, but it's going to happen. Until we get to that point to where we consciously decide that we want to move in a different direction, and you can hold people accountable as best you can. And when somebody make that decision that they don't want to live anymore and take some people with them, there's nothing anybody can really do about that. Just hope it's not one of your family members or someone that's close to you who you love. But even if you take away the mass shootings, how many shootings that we just have every day, just one on person? Right. You have 10 murders in a week, but that kind of bypasses because it's one or two at a time. But at the end of the day, it was 10 people who got shot doing that same. And I bet if you go back to Nashville, there was 10 people who got shot in that week, killed more than likely. Right. But we kind of overlooked those 10 that got shot because you had 6 that got shot at one time. You still got 10 other people that are walking around here with some kind of mental issues where they shot 10 other people.
Yeah. I mean, you're right. You're right about that. I mean, if you look at like these weekend murder stats coming out of Chicago or LA, you're right, brother. I sometimes wonder if I'm not reading war reports. I mean, my Lord, the number of people get shot.
Yeah, and that's and that's kind of when I used to be. You kind of read the newspaper and you kind of just read it for what's going on in the world, but now it's like every day. It's like, okay, 2 people got shot over here and 2 got killed, and 1 got, during the course of a month in Louisville, how many people are killed in a month, but in the course of a week, how many people are shot and killed right here in the city of Louisville inside of a course of a week?
Right.
I guarantee it's probably at least 6 people, 7 people on average.
Speaking of Louisville, I love my city, proud of my city. I'm proud to be a Kentuckian. I love my city. I love my Louisville. But there just seems to be a little too much gun violence going on. I mean, what do you think are some things that we should be doing or should be thinking about doing, or that we're not doing or we're not thinking about doing? I mean, do you have some thoughts?
I mean, I think everything starts with, the family. And when you get the breakdown of the traditional family, then you end up with the situation that you're in. I mean, you can't have, if you take and broke everything down by the demographics, is going to show you where you have a high rate of single parent households. Then you're going to have a higher crime rate. You're going to have a higher, rate of pregnancy, among single women. You're going to have lower test scores when it comes to school. You're going to have less when it comes to performance and those who go on, to get careers. And, so you find lesser of everything.
Yeah.
Anytime you find those dynamics to where you don't have a stable family structure, in terms of a traditional family structure. So when you don't have that, then everything else is just a byproduct of that.
And who needs to sort of bring that together? Is it the church? Because I don't know how you feel about it, but I just don't see the government being able to do it. I mean, I don't care what.
Well, it's not the government's responsibility. It's not the government's responsibility.
Okay.
To put now is I guess you can't say it's their. I think that you can't put families together, but what I think government can do is incentivize, those people who are trying to do it, and incentivize those people who can show that, hey, man, we've been married for 5 years, 10 years. And if you go buy the house, then, man, maybe we give you some type of tax credit or some type of down payment assistance or something kind of like what they did, back after World War II, where you have these GA loans. You can have, hey, we got these marital loans for, if you can show that you've been married for 5 years and you're ready to go buy your first house, then we're going to give you a forgivable down payment.
Wow. Okay. I see what you mean by it. Yeah. Okay.
What I'm saying? So just like, because you're incentivizing people who don't try to do the right thing, but saying, hey, if you have a kid and you have this kid without the other male, without the other person being a part of the equation, then we're going to give you subsidized housing. We're going to give you food programs. We're going to give you all these benefits of really irresponsible behavior, because you're pretty much saying, well, the more responsible you are, the more we're going to give you. And therefore, why not reward people who are being responsible? And then say, okay, if we're gonna give somebody money for not being responsible, then why can't we help people who are being responsible? Why should it be, if I'm a married couple and we're trying to do the right thing and we're middle income, and our income is at a certain level and we want to buy a house but we can't get the down payment, then why not have a program for somebody that's been married for 5 years and their income is X amount of dollars, and they're trying to do it as a couple, they're trying to do it the right way, then give them an incentive, help them along the process, because you're already doing it for individuals who are not married. Because, I don't think you should be rewarded for having kids. I know I'll probably catch a little criticism for that, but that's just how I feel. I mean, you shouldn't be given something because you choose to do something that is not healthy for the overall community. And every stat shows that single parenting is not healthy for the overall community. And then therefore you have to have those incentives in place for that situation.
Right. Yeah, I hear you, bro. We got a few minutes left, and I wanted to touch upon this whole reparations question. I mean, where do you fall on that? What are some of your thoughts on that?
Controversial. I'm not a big proponent of reparations. I've had discussions with, those pro reparation people. I mean, I think that, when you're trying to get the reparations, are you saying you want reparations for what? What exactly are you trying to get reparations for?
Well, they're saying slavery. Hey, they owe us reparations for slavery. We gave all those years of free labor, created all this wealth for America. Now America owes us. They owe us a debt. I want to get paid for all that. Well, I want to get paid for all that free labor my ancestors gave over. And then they talk about the Jim Crow era, racial discrimination. Hey, you held me back. That pushed me back. I want reparations for that. I want to so I can be truly equal in American society.
Okay. The way I look at it, that those can be two separate issues, because slavery on one hand and Jim Crow on the other hand those may be two, in my opinion, those could be two totally separate issues, because when you're dealing with slavery as an institution, that was something that wasn't just practiced here in America. That you can go to any continent on this planet and there was slavery that was being practiced in some form or fashion. It's been practiced among whites, Chinese, people here, in North America. So I don't know if you can really go back and say, okay, we need to be paid for slavery. Are you going to go back and then try to get reparations from the people who did the actual selling of slaves?
Right.
Because if you say, okay, if somebody sold me into slavery, then they begin the process. So should not be able to go back and try to get reparations from those people who originally captured that slave. And if it's African people on the African continent, well, can I hold them liable? And then again, what court are you going to go to make your claim?
Yeah.
You're going to go to the international courts. You're going to try to go to the same courts that you claimed enslaved you. Which, and then again, what's going to be your basis and your president for saying they need to be, paid for being slaves? Because anybody can make that claim on the planet. Now we try to put it in the racial terms, and then again, who's paying it? Are you saying the government should pay it? Are the families of those individuals who own slaves? So you have to look at it from that standpoint. Now, if you want to go back to Jim Crow and segregation, you can possibly make a claim in that, but you have to show how each individual was actually affected. So how are you going to show how each person was affected by what happened? And then how far back are you going to go? And then who's going to be entitled to those claims?
Right.
Because you got some white people that got African-American blood in it. I mean, I just had, I've got a little niece that was just born, back in November, and she's white as snow. So at some point in time, can she make a claim? Right. Because, so are you just going off what somebody appears? What happened when you get a bunch of white, blue-eyed people who show up and they can show you, I got African ancestors. I got foundational Black American ancestors in my blood. Are they entitled to that reparation and part of that actual claim? So I think that all jokes aside, I just think that you got some petty race hustlers that's just running out here selling books, selling podcasts, knowing that this is not a reality. Because if you look at what happened, and I very vaguely looked at what happened in San Francisco, which was not a slave state, which didn't own slaves, and I think they had a settlement where they were talking about paying $5 million to recipients of slavery, and when they were ready to pay that out, I don't know about this thing, and when they were ready to pay it out, and I think it was backed by the NAACP, and he was talking about paying individual claims. And then the NAACP, or the guy, whoever was representing, I don't want to say it was exactly the NAACP, but one of the guys who was filing the claim, he was like, oh, no, we don't want to give it to the people. We wanted to go into these programs. Well, who's going to be running the program?
Right. See, hold up.
So sometimes people make that claim. Right. And I had a discussion with a nephew of mine. He was like, man, the minute they talk about giving out money, the person who's saying is probably going to be like, oh, no, don't give them that money, because if they get the money, then that takes away from what I'm doing, which is trying to sell people on the concept of that they should get it. And another reason I'm not a big supporter of it is that how does this help America as a country? You're probably may make the country more divisive. And how much are you going to create? Inflation is bad enough, but what happens when you start throwing millions of dollars out to these people, and then all of a sudden you got a dollar that's all of a sudden inflated that has no value to it?
Right. Yeah.
So
you're introducing.
I'm not going to destroy the company. I mean, not destroy the company, but I don't want to see the country destroyed over reparations. And
Right.
I think it's a very emotional topic, and most people who make the argument make it from an emotional standpoint. They're not
Yeah.
making it from a standpoint of logic, reason, and just looking at world history and understanding that you aren't the only victim that's out here, and you're not the only people. You know, I'm black, you're black, a lot of us are what we call black. We're not the only victims on this planet. We're not the most mistreated victims on this planet. And, you know, I can give you, you know, once I had a discussion and I was like, okay, who would you rather trade places with that's gone through some trauma? Would you rather trade it with this group over here? Would you rather trade it with some Russian Slavs or another group of people or this group of people? Would you want to change places with, you know, the Chinese who were under, you know, Japanese imperialism? Would you like to trade it for that? So anybody can always claim that status of victimhood. It's just that fortunately we're in a group that tries to claim it more than anybody.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's not healthy. And I'll just say right there, just claiming a victim status is not healthy.
Yeah, I feel you on that. You know, earlier what you said, it's like, okay, where's the money coming from? It's got to be a tax program, and more than likely, I mean, we already have a $1 trillion plus national debt, so we're going to have to print the money. If we print the money, like you say, that devalues the dollar. The dollars that's already in circulation. We're leading towards hyperinflation. And then, you know, exactly how would you pay the reparations? You're going to give people checks, or you're going to put it into a particular program. Now, if you start talking about that, then you might see a civil war amongst those different black organizations, because they're going to say, "No, give the money to me," and then others said, "No, man, don't give it to him, give it to me." Oh man, brothers going to pick up the gun and shoot one another. You think
right, exactly. And that's why I said the one guy, when they were talking about paying out the claims and when they were talking about going to the recipients, well, the one guy who was making the claim for the reparation, he was like, no, it was never intended to go into the hands of the people. It was meant to go into these programs. And then those programs are going to have to set up the organizations to run the programs.
Right.
And guess who might end up running that program? And you're the CEO or the president of that program.
Right.
And you're paying yourself an admin fee, and the rest of this stuff is
right.
You know, going to wherever, you know. So we all
hustle,
know how
man.
that works. Well, I mean, that's what I'm saying. Like when people are promoting that, and I'll be honest. I mean, my personal opinion, I think the people who do promote it, it's part of their overall hustle to sell books and podcasts and trinkets and blinkets and then whatever else that they can sell. That's basically attached to that. So because the reality is, it will probably never happen.
Right.
And if it did happen, you could possibly destroy the American economy and even the country itself.
Yeah. You know, one thing I said, bro, and I put this out. One thing I said, if white folks, those white folks that support reparations, if they are serious, you don't need to wait for the government to pay reparations. I'm right here. I'll tell you how to make the check payable, and you can just give it directly to me.
Right.
Why
do you need to wait? And then again, are you saying the government owes for reparations? Are you saying the individuals owe for it? Are you saying corporations owe for it?
Right.
Because the government of America did not own slaves.
Right.
Individuals own slaves. And even when you look at the individuals that own slaves, even throughout the South, it was a very small percentage. It was less than 1% of whites who even lived in those slaveholding states that even owned slaves.
Right. But I just want all those guilt-ridden woke white folks. If you just believe the U.S. government owes us black people don't wait for Biden to cut the check. You cut me a check.
When it's coming out of your pocket, it's a different. And again, are they really pushing it because they believe in it? Are they pushing it because it sets up the agenda so that you can get certain people to vote towards a certain party?
Right. I got you.
like, do I really want it? Am I really meaning that? Or I'm just trying to get this group to really vote for this particular party, at least get them to come out when I need them to vote for this particular party with the illusion that this is what's on the agenda.
I got you. I got you.
But again, even if you put it in there, what's also wrapped into that bill?
Right. Right.
Because it ain't going to just be that by itself. That's going to be a Trojan horse for something else.
Oh, you better
it's kind of like the CRT bill. We'll put the CRT bill in there, but inside that CRT bill is some other stuff.
Right, right. All right, man. I appreciate your time today. Let me say this real quick. This is Book Talk with Corbin, folks. I just had a good discussion with my brother here, local guy, local thinker, wise brother. Always good to just talk with some average folks and to get their perspective on things. You know, oftentimes I'm interviewing New York Times authors or national podcasters or, scientists, things like that. But it's always good to get good, refreshing perspective from just an average citizen out there. And that's what we just got with my brother, James. And go to my website, Book Talk with Corbin, Corbin. And this interview will be posted up there soon. And please like and share. It would also be posted on my YouTube channel, Corbin Sievers, and people can read it there. Brother, I hope we can do this again sometime, okay?
Man, I appreciate the invite. And anytime you feel like I'm worthy enough to come and do one of these podcasts, man, I definitely appreciate the opportunity to come. And again, I'm appreciative and honored at the fact that you thought enough of me to invite me.
All right.
Onto your podcast. And thank you. And have a happy Easter weekend.
Hey, brother. Same to you, man. We'll do it again sometime, brother.
Okay, man. Look forward to it. Thanks a lot.